The morning sun filtered gently through the tall pine trees surrounding the cabin, casting a soft golden glow across the wooden deck. Birds chirped in the distance, and a faint breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the earthy scent of the forest. For the homeowner, life at this secluded cabin was a peaceful escape from the constant noise and rush of the city. Every detail of the property, from the small garden near the porch to the smooth surface of the lake reflecting the sky, was a personal haven, a space where tranquility reigned and worries seemed far away. That morning, the protagonist, a careful observer of nature and routines, sipped a steaming cup of coffee while sitting in the rocking chair on the deck. The water of the lake shimmered like glass, and for a few minutes all was perfect. The only sound was the soft lapping of water against the shore and the occasional call of a distant bird. This cabin had been a dream realized, a place where moments of peace could be fully savored without intrusion. Yet even in such a serene setting, life had a way of introducing unexpected disruptions. As the protagonist set the cup down and scanned the driveway, a flicker of movement caught the eye. At first, it seemed like a bird landing on the gravel path, but then another movement followed, and another. Soon, the outline of vehicles became visible between the trees, an unusual sight in a place so normally quiet. A small frown creased the homeowner's forehead. Visitors weren't entirely uncommon, but this felt different. Too many cars too close to the cabin with no warning. Curiosity mingled with concern, and the protagonist decided to investigate. Walking down the winding gravel path toward the driveway, they noticed the unmistakable signs of activity. Tables were being carried, and large pieces of fabric or decorations fluttered in the breeze. Voices, laughter, and faint music drifted from the clearing ahead, carrying a liveliness that felt out of place in the stillness of the morning. Something was happening, and it was happening on the homeowner's property without any prior notice. As the protagonist approached, they saw Karen, a neighbor known in the area for her assertive personality and tendency to act first and think later. Karen was busy directing a group of helpers, gesturing enthusiastically as she supervised the placement of chairs and decorations. The homeowner paused for a moment, trying to process the scene. Karen seemed entirely comfortable here, as though the cabin belonged to her. The mix of shock and disbelief rose quickly. "Good morning," the homeowner called, projecting calm but firm authority. "What is going on here?" Karen turned and smiled brightly as if the answer were perfectly ordinary. "Oh, hi, I'm just getting ready for a big wedding. I reserved this cabin for the celebration," she said, her voice cheerful and confident. The homeowner blinked. "Reserved the cabin? This is private property, you can't just—" "Don't worry," Karen interrupted lightly, waving a hand as though brushing off the concern. "Everything's fine. I got permission from the HOA." The homeowner felt a tightening in their chest. The thought of a large gathering, unannounced and unapproved, unfolding on their private property was unnerving. "I'm sorry, but this cabin belongs to me. No events have been approved here," they said, trying to maintain composure while masking the surge of frustration. "You need to stop this before it gets out of hand." Karen gave a small laugh as if the comment were amusing. "Oh, don't worry, it's all under control. We'll be gone soon, just a few friends celebrating. Nothing serious," she said, though the dozens of chairs and the tents suggested otherwise. The homeowner's mind raced. A peaceful day at the cabin, meticulously planned and eagerly anticipated, was suddenly overshadowed by the realization that someone was actively preparing for a large, unapproved gathering. They looked around, noting the cars parked along the gravel driveway and the helpers bustling about. The scene was clearly becoming chaotic, and they couldn't let it continue unchecked. Taking a deep breath, the homeowner resolved to act. This wasn't just about inconvenience. It was about respecting boundaries and maintaining the sanctuary that the cabin represented. They squared their shoulders, prepared to confront the situation directly, but also carefully. Any action taken needed to be firm but reasonable to avoid unnecessary conflict while protecting their property. As the breeze rustled through the trees again, carrying with it the faint scent of freshly cut grass and pine, the protagonist realized one thing. The quiet life they cherished was about to be tested, and the day would unfold in ways they could not yet imagine. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the cabin grounds, yet the once peaceful scene had shifted. The protagonist, still standing near the edge of the driveway, watched as more cars arrived. Each vehicle brought new people, smiling and chatting, many carrying bags, boxes, and unfamiliar equipment. The sound of laughter grew louder, mixing with the distant hum of music that seemed out of place in the quiet forest. Karen, ever enthusiastic, moved among the guests with a sense of authority. She handed instructions to helpers, adjusted decorations, and even checked the placement of tables with a critical eye. Her energy was contagious, and soon the entire clearing around the cabin was buzzing with activity. The protagonist's stomach tightened. What had started as a few cars and a couple of helpers was clearly escalating into a full event. Stepping closer, the homeowner tried once more to assert control. "Karen, I need to stop you right now," they said, raising a hand to signal for her attention. "This cabin is private property. You can't have this gathering here without approval." Karen turned with a bright smile, tilting her head slightly as if the request were a minor inconvenience. "Oh, don't worry about that," she said, her tone breezy. "I've already coordinated everything with the HOA. They said it's fine. Everyone is excited and it will only be for a few hours." The homeowner felt a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Excited or not, this isn't your decision to make. I am the owner, and I haven't approved any event here. You need to stop immediately before it becomes more complicated." Karen waved a hand dismissively, then directed another helper to bring out chairs from a nearby van. "We're just setting up for a beautiful wedding," she said. "You'll see, it will be lovely. There's no harm in a few people celebrating." The protagonist could see the number of guests growing rapidly. Dozens of people were now spread across the lawn, laughing, carrying tables, and arranging decorations. The music grew louder, a cheerful but disruptive soundtrack for what should have been a quiet morning. Each passing minute made it more difficult to contain the situation. Neighbors from nearby cabins began to peek through the trees, whispering to one another. Some glanced with curiosity, others with concern. They had seen Karen's assertive tendencies before, but this was unlike anything they had witnessed. The sheer scale of the gathering suggested a lack of planning or respect for property boundaries. Taking a deep breath, the homeowner approached Karen again, this time more firmly. "Karen, I am asking you one more time. Stop this event. This is private property and you are trespassing. I need you to pack everything up and leave." Karen paused, her smile unwavering. "I understand you feel strongly, but everything is already set up. The guests are here and it's too late to change plans. Don't worry, no one will be upset." The homeowner's heart sank. The situation was spinning out of control. The thought of dozens of guests, tents, tables, and vendors all being set up on their private property without permission was overwhelming. The protagonist knew they had to act strategically. Reacting with anger could escalate the situation, but doing nothing would let the intrusion continue unchecked. They stepped back for a moment, observing Karen's confidence and the energy of the crowd. It was clear that Karen had assumed the cabin was available for her use, ignoring boundaries completely. Every time the homeowner spoke, she seemed to reinterpret it as minor objection rather than serious instruction. The homeowner decided it was time to take practical steps. They began documenting the situation with photos and notes, capturing the number of vehicles, the size of the gathering, and the actions being taken. If the situation escalated further, this evidence could be crucial. As the morning continued, the contrast between the serenity of the cabin and the bustling scene unfolding became more apparent. What had started as a peaceful retreat now resembled a busy public venue, all orchestrated without consent. The protagonist felt a surge of determination. They would not let their private property be taken over, and they would assert their rights calmly but firmly. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, and the homeowner knew the next few hours would be critical. Karen and her guests were well-intentioned in their excitement, but good intentions did not override ownership or boundaries. The protagonist prepared for the confrontation ahead, knowing that standing firm would be necessary to restore order. Even as the music played and guests laughed, the calm of the morning was gone. The quiet cabin had transformed into a lively, unauthorized celebration, and the homeowner realized that protecting their sanctuary would require patience, courage, and careful action. The sun climbed higher into the sky, casting a bright light over the cabin and the growing scene of activity. The once quiet clearing was now filled with chairs, tables, and colorful decorations fluttering in the gentle breeze. The cheerful hum of music combined with voices of arriving guests, laughter, and the occasional clatter of equipment created a stark contrast to the peaceful mornings the homeowner was accustomed to. The protagonist felt a deep sense of intrusion, realizing that the cabin's serene environment had been transformed in a matter of hours. Determined to regain control, the homeowner walked firmly toward the center of the clearing where Karen was directing helpers with unwavering energy. Guests were beginning to place table settings, hang banners, and organize food stations. Karen, unaware of the growing tension, smiled broadly as she coordinated the final details. The homeowner cleared their throat, hopping to catch Karen's attention without causing an unnecessary scene. "Karen," the homeowner called, projecting calm authority. "We need to stop this immediately. This cabin is private property and you do not have permission for this gathering." Karen looked up, momentarily surprised, then smiled as if the comment were a minor inconvenience. "Oh, don't worry," she said cheerfully. "I've coordinated everything with the HOA and they said it's fine. The guests are here and we're just getting ready for a simple celebration." The homeowner felt frustration rise but kept their voice steady. "This is not a matter of opinion. You are on private property without approval. I am asking you to stop all preparations and have everyone leave. This is your first and only warning." Karen tilted her head, a playful yet confident look on her face. "I understand you feel strongly, but everything is already arranged. It's too late to change plans now. It would be a shame to disappoint everyone who traveled here." The protagonist could see the genuine excitement on the faces of the guests, most of whom were unaware of any conflict. They were here for what they thought was a beautiful celebration, completely unaware that the homeowner had not approved it. The homeowner's resolve strengthened. This was about boundaries, property rights, and maintaining the peace of the cabin, not about denying enjoyment. The homeowner took a step closer, their posture firm but composed. "I respect your enthusiasm, but the property belongs to me. No celebration can proceed without my consent. You need to halt all activity immediately." Karen's smile remained, but her tone grew slightly firmer. "I see you're serious, but I promise it will be fine. It's just a small wedding and no one is being harmed. Surely we can work something out." The homeowner shook their head. "It's not about harm, it's about control of my property. Please understand that this is not negotiable. You need to pack up and leave." A few of Karen's helpers glanced nervously between the two, unsure whose instructions to follow. The homeowner could see the hesitation and realized the importance of remaining calm and authoritative. Losing composure could escalate the situation unnecessarily, and the goal was to resolve it without conflict. Karen seemed to pause, sensing that the homeowner was not bluffing. She took a step back, adjusting a decoration as if buying time to think. The guests, noticing the rising tension, began murmuring among themselves. Some looked concerned, others curious, and a few whispered quietly to one another, glancing at the homeowner as though waiting for an explanation. The homeowner took advantage of the brief pause. "I am documenting this situation to ensure there is a clear record of what is happening. This gathering cannot continue without permission. Please cooperate to avoid further complications." Karen's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of realization crossing her face. She had not anticipated that the homeowner would remain calm, firm, and prepared. The homeowner could see that this was the moment to maintain composure and reinforce authority without confrontation. The clearing fell into a brief silence, punctuated only by the distant music and the occasional rustle of leaves. The homeowner felt the weight of the moment, knowing that the next steps would determine whether the situation escalated or resolved peacefully. They had drawn a clear line, and it was now up to Karen to respect it, or risk further consequences. As the homeowner watched, Karen appeared to reconsider her next move, glancing around at the gathering she had so confidently orchestrated. For the first time, it seemed possible that she might realize the seriousness of the situation. The homeowner, standing tall and unwavering, prepared for the next stage of the day, knowing that asserting boundaries would require both patience and vigilance. The quiet determination in the homeowner's eyes contrasted sharply with the cheerful chaos around them, signaling that the peace of the cabin would not be compromised without careful attention. The first confrontation had begun, and the events of the morning were only the opening act of a day that promised to be anything but ordinary. By midday, the cabin grounds had transformed into a bustling hub of activity. What had begun as a quiet morning of reflection and tranquility was now filled with music, chatter, and the rustling of decorations being set up across the clearing. The homeowner, standing near the edge of the property, watched with growing concern. Karen had moved confidently among the guests and helpers, issuing instructions as though she were the owner of the cabin rather than a visitor on private property. The homeowner knew that a calm approach was necessary, but each passing minute added weight to the situation. More guests arrived, parking cars along the gravel driveway and spilling onto nearby shoulders of land. Tents and tables, some partially erected, while others required more attention from the helpers. The scale of the gathering far exceeded what had been initially suggested, and the homeowner realized that this was no longer a small celebration. Feeling the urgency, the homeowner approached Karen once again, keeping their tone firm but controlled. "Karen, this is getting out of hand. You need to stop now. This is private property and no events have been approved. I am asking you to halt everything immediately." Karen paused, a slight frown crossing her face as she scanned the grounds. She seemed to realize the seriousness in the homeowner's expression, but responded with her usual confidence. "I understand your concern, but it's really not a problem. Everyone is excited, and I've already planned this far ahead. Surely we can work it out without making it tense." The homeowner shook their head. "This isn't about tension, it's about boundaries. You cannot continue without approval. I need you to begin dismantling the setup now." Karen waved a hand dismissively, then turned to a helper. "Just keep going. We'll finish the decorations. There's no reason to worry about the owner. They'll understand once they see how organized we are." The homeowner took a deep breath, realizing that words alone might not resolve the issue. They needed to stay calm while also preparing for potential escalation. Each step Karen took to continue the gathering felt like a challenge to the property's boundaries, and the homeowner knew it was crucial to remain composed and firm. As the morning unfolded into early afternoon, more neighbors began noticing the commotion. Some peeked curiously from the edge of the woods, while others whispered among themselves about the unusual number of guests and equipment. The homeowner recognized that the situation had grown visible enough to attract attention beyond just Karen's group. This realization made the homeowner even more determined to handle the matter responsibly, setting a clear example of calm authority. The music, now louder, played across the clearing, creating a festive atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the homeowner's growing concern. Children ran between tents, and helpers carried trays of supplies. The homeowner felt an internal struggle, balancing the need to assert authority while avoiding unnecessary conflict in front of unsuspecting guests. Every interaction required patience and strategic thinking. At one point, the homeowner stepped into the clearing and raised their hands to signal attention. "Everyone, please stop for a moment," they called, voices quieted as guests noticed the homeowner's presence. "This property is private and no event has been authorized. I need everyone to remain where they are while we sort this out. I appreciate your cooperation." Karen stepped forward, attempting to regain control. "It's fine, really. There's no need to make this a problem. Everyone is here to celebrate and it will be over soon," she said, her tone light but slightly strained. The homeowner met her gaze steadily. "I am serious, Karen. This cannot continue. I need you to pause all preparations immediately. This is not negotiable." For a brief moment, Karen's confident demeanor wavered. She glanced around at the helpers, who now looked unsure of what to do. The homeowner recognized that they had reached a pivotal moment. Standing firm, documenting the situation, and maintaining calm had created a pause in Karen's momentum. As the breeze stirred the trees and the sounds of the gathering echoed across the clearing, the homeowner felt a mix of relief and vigilance. Relief that some sense of pause had been established, vigilance because the situation was far from resolved. They knew the next steps would require careful attention, but for now, the first cracks in Karen's confidence were visible. The tension in the air was almost tangible, stretching between the homeowner and Karen like an unspoken challenge. The peaceful sanctuary of the cabin was under siege, yet the homeowner remained steady, aware that patience, composure, and clear communication were the most powerful tools in restoring order. The day had begun with a quiet morning at the cabin, and now, as afternoon approached, it had become a test of boundaries, respect, and determination. The homeowner realized that rising tension was inevitable, but so was the need to protect the calm and privacy of the place they cherished. By early afternoon, the scale of the gathering had become impossible to ignore. The homeowner stood on the porch, surveying the scene with a mix of disbelief and growing determination. Cars lined every portion of the driveway and even spilled onto the shoulder of the road leading to the cabin. Tents stretched across the clearing, tables were arranged in neat rows, and colorful decorations hung from trees and poles. Music and laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the calm the homeowner had cherished that morning. As they walked closer to the gathering, the full scope became clear. Karen had invited nearly 100 people. Children ran between tents, couples carried trays of food, and helpers continued to arrange decorations as if the homeowner's presence was invisible. The protagonist's initial hope that this was just a small celebration had vanished. It was now a major event happening entirely without permission. The homeowner felt a deep, steadying breath pass through them. This wasn't just a minor intrusion anymore. It was a significant challenge to their property rights and the peace of the cabin. Yet they reminded themselves to remain calm. Anger or panic would not resolve the situation. Clear thinking and measured action were required. Karen noticed the homeowner approaching and smiled, a confident gleam in her eye. "See, everything is coming together perfectly. The guests are happy and it's going to be a wonderful celebration. Isn't it exciting?" she said, gesturing broadly at the bustling gathering. The homeowner shook their head, holding up a hand to stop her. "Karen, this is far beyond what you told me. Nearly 100 people are here, setting up tents, tables, and equipment. This is private property, and no permission has been granted for an event of this size. You need to halt everything immediately and begin clearing it." Karen's smile faltered slightly as she glanced around at the guests. Some were laughing, others were curious, but all seemed unaware of the homeowner's objections. "It's really not as serious as you're making it," she said, her voice still light but showing the slightest edge of unease. "Everyone traveled a long way, and I promised them this would be a special day. Surely we can let it continue for a little while." The homeowner met her gaze evenly. "It doesn't matter how far anyone traveled or how special you want it to be. This is my property. You cannot proceed without approval. I am asking you firmly, stop the event now." Karen took a deep breath and looked around, her confidence wavering for the first time that morning. She glanced at the helpers, who now seemed uncertain, and then at the guests, who were fully immersed in the setup. It was clear that the scale of the event was causing strain, not in logistics alone, but in the realization that the homeowner's authority could not be ignored. The homeowner used the pause to document the situation. They took photos of vehicles, tents, tables, and decorations, capturing the extent of the unapproved gathering. Notes were made of who was present, what was happening, and the sequence of events. The evidence would be important if further steps were needed to resolve the situation responsibly. Even with documentation in hand, the homeowner remained aware that confrontation was inevitable. They approached Karen again, voice calm but firm. "I am giving you one final opportunity to respect my property. All preparations must stop immediately, and everyone needs to remain in place while we sort this out. Ignoring this will only make the situation more complicated for everyone." Karen hesitated, visibly calculating her options. Her confident demeanor was fading as she realized that the homeowner's persistence was not a bluff. She turned slightly to the guests, whose cheerful energy suddenly seemed out of place in the growing tension. The homeowner noticed this shift, recognizing that standing firm had begun to have an effect. As the breeze rustled through the trees and music continued softly in the background, the homeowner felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. relief that Karen's confidence was beginning to waver, and anticipation because the next steps would determine whether the situation could be resolved peacefully. They knew that clarity, patience, and firm boundaries were crucial in guiding the day toward order. The clearing, once vibrant with activity and excitement, now felt like a stage set for a delicate negotiation. The homeowner realized that the peaceful morning they had enjoyed was gone, but their resolve had grown stronger. Protecting the cabin meant asserting authority without hostility, and the discovery of the full scale of the event had made that responsibility unmistakably clear. Even as laughter and chatter continued around them, the homeowner's focus remained unshakable. They understood that the next moments would define the day, and that every decision needed to balance firmness, calmness, and respect. The challenge was immense, but so was the importance of preserving the peace of the cabin. By mid-afternoon, the atmosphere around the cabin had shifted. The once cheerful chatter of guests was now tinged with uncertainty, and the energy of the gathering seemed to waver. The homeowner, standing near the edge of the clearing, felt a mixture of determination and tension. They knew that this was the moment to assert boundaries decisively, and that calm, firm communication was essential. Karen, sensing that her confidence was being challenged, moved closer to the homeowner with a bright but slightly strained smile. "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal," she said. "It's just a wedding celebration. Everyone is happy and nothing is being harmed. Surely we can compromise." The homeowner met her gaze steadily, their voice calm but authoritative. "Karen, this is private property. No event of this size has been authorized. You are on my property without permission. I need you to stop immediately and have everyone remain in place while we resolve this." Karen's smile faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered. "I promise it's not a problem. I coordinated with the HOA and they said everything is fine. This is going to be a beautiful event and I don't see why we need to stop." The homeowner shook their head. "It doesn't matter what you coordinated. You did not have my consent. This is my property and I am asking you once more to halt the preparations immediately. This is not negotiable." Karen's hands fluttered briefly, a subtle sign of frustration as she glanced at the guests and helpers around her. "Everyone came a long way and I already promised them this celebration. Can't you just let it go for a little while? It will all be over soon." The homeowner took a deep breath, maintaining composure despite the rising tension. "It's not about being difficult. It's about respecting boundaries. You cannot continue with this gathering without approval. I am asking you firmly, stop now." Karen's expression hardened slightly, and she reached for her phone. "If you insist on being difficult, I'll call the authorities. I have every right to be here, and I won't let you ruin the event for everyone." The homeowner felt a surge of tension. This was exactly the moment they had anticipated, Karen attempting to shift responsibility by involving others. Yet they remained calm, speaking clearly and confidently. "Calling authorities is your choice, but the facts remain the same. This property is private and you are trespassing. I am documenting everything so that there is a clear record of the situation. Please cooperate to avoid further complications." Karen hesitated, her confidence wavering as she realized that the homeowner was serious and prepared. The guests around them began to murmur quietly, noticing the tension. Some looked uncertain, while others whispered to each other, curious about the unfolding confrontation. The homeowner realized that remaining calm in front of everyone was crucial to prevent panic or unnecessary escalation. Stepping closer, the homeowner continued, their voice steady and firm. "Karen, I understand that you are excited and I respect that, but excitement does not grant permission to use someone else's property. I need you to halt the event immediately and ensure that everyone remains in place until this is resolved. This is the only way to avoid confusion or further issues." Karen looked around at the growing number of onlookers, sensing that the situation was no longer entirely in her control. The homeowner's calm authority, combined with clear documentation and a firm stance, had shifted the dynamic. The helpers who had been uncertain now looked to Karen for guidance, realizing that continuing without approval could create consequences. After a tense pause, Karen's shoulders slumped slightly, a subtle sign that her momentum was breaking. She tapped her phone but seemed unsure whether to follow through. The homeowner maintained their stance, not threatening but fully asserting authority. Every step they took, every calm word spoken, reinforced the clear boundary. The cabin was private, and no celebration could continue without permission. The clearing, once alive with carefree energy, now seemed suspended in anticipation. The homeowner's steady presence contrasted with Karen's wavering confidence, creating a visible shift in the atmosphere. Guests and helpers alike began to pause, waiting for the next move. As the sun moved across the sky, the homeowner felt a mixture of relief and vigilance. Relief that the first cracks in Karen's confidence were visible, and vigilance because the situation was far from resolved. They understood that the next moments would be critical in determining whether the event could be brought under control peacefully and respectfully. The verbal showdown had reached its peak, and the homeowner knew that remaining calm, documenting the situation, and asserting boundaries clearly were the keys to restoring order. The day, which began in quiet serenity, had become a delicate test of authority, patience, and composure. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cabin grounds, but the homeowner's focus remained fixed on the growing situation. Karen had called the authorities, and now everyone, including the guests and helpers, was waiting, uncertain of what would happen next. The once lively clearing was now filled with a mixture of anticipation and tension. The homeowner knew that when law enforcement arrived, clarity and calm would be crucial in explaining the situation accurately. Within what felt like an eternity, the sound of sirens approached from the distance. 2 patrol vehicles turned onto the gravel driveway, their lights flashing briefly, announcing their presence without causing panic. The homeowner stepped forward to greet the officers as they approached, maintaining a calm and authoritative stance. "Good afternoon," the homeowner said, speaking clearly. "Thank you for coming. This is my property and I need to explain what's happening." The officers nodded and began taking in the scene. Cars were parked along the driveway, tents and tables were set up, and people were milling about, some clearly confused by the sudden arrival of law enforcement. Karen stepped forward with her phone in hand, ready to speak, her earlier confidence now tempered by the visible presence of the authorities. The homeowner explained the situation succinctly. The cabin was private property, no events had been approved, and Karen had set up a large gathering without permission. They showed the officers the photos and notes documenting the number of vehicles, tents, and attendees, emphasizing the importance of maintaining order and respecting property boundaries. The officers listened attentively, occasionally nodding as they absorbed the details. They then turned to Karen, giving her the opportunity to explain her perspective. Karen spoke quickly, describing the event as a celebration and claiming she had HOA approval. The officers asked follow-up questions, carefully balancing neutrality with the need to gather facts. It quickly became clear to the authorities that while Karen had good intentions in trying to host a celebration, she had acted without obtaining permission from the homeowner. The homeowner's documentation, combined with their calm and factual account, provided a clear record of the unauthorized gathering. The officers spoke to the guests, explaining the situation in a neutral tone. "We understand everyone is here to celebrate," one officer said, "but this property belongs to the homeowner and no event was approved. We need everyone to pause and wait while the situation is resolved." Some guests looked embarrassed, while others nodded quietly, realizing the misunderstanding. Karen, realizing that the authorities were siding with the homeowner's documentation and explanation, began directing her helpers to pause the setup. Tents that were half erected were folded back, and tables began to be moved away from the clearing. The music was lowered, and the guests were guided to remain seated or in one area as the officers oversaw the process. The homeowner observed everything calmly, ensuring that the process was orderly. There was no need for confrontation. The presence of the authorities had clarified boundaries. Karen reluctantly, her energy subdued, while the homeowner maintained a quiet but firm authority over the property. Once the gathering had been paused and the unauthorized setup addressed, one of the officers spoke directly to Karen. "You can plan celebrations in coordination with property owners and the HOA, but you cannot set up events on private property without consent. This ensures safety, order, and respect for boundaries. Karen nodded, absorbing the instruction. The homeowner thanked the officers for their prompt attention and explained that their primary goal was not punishment, but to restore the peace and privacy of the cabin. The authorities ensured that all guests understood the rules and then departed, leaving the clearing once again quiet, though with traces of the day's activities still visible. As the vehicles of the officers disappeared down the driveway, the homeowner exhaled deeply. The tension that had built over the past hours was slowly dissipating. The cabin, once again, felt like a sanctuary. Karen and her helpers had packed up most of the setup, leaving the grounds orderly and the space returning to its natural calm. The homeowner reflected on the events, recognizing that firmness, patience, and calm authority had been key to resolving the situation without unnecessary conflict. The presence of the authorities had confirmed the boundaries, and the cabin's peace was finally being restored. Even as the last of the guests departed and the sound of laughter faded into the distance, the homeowner knew the day had been a test of patience, composure, and respect for personal property. The quiet of the cabin was returning, but the lessons of the day about vigilance, calm assertiveness, and maintaining boundaries would remain with them. By late afternoon, the cabin grounds were finally quiet. The once chaotic clearing, filled with cars, tents, and music, now stood empty, save for a few scattered leaves and the soft rustle of trees in the breeze. The homeowner walked slowly across the lawn, surveying the space that had been the center of the day's unexpected turmoil. It was a relief to see the natural serenity restored, the lake glistening in the sunlight, and the gentle chirping of birds filling the air once more. Karen and her helpers were packing up the last of the equipment. The energy that had been so lively and assertive earlier in the day had been replaced with subdued movements and quiet conversations. Karen, having realized the seriousness of the homeowner's authority and the importance of boundaries, had ceased all attempts to continue the event. She offered a small nod to the homeowner, an unspoken acknowledgement of the lesson learned, though the pride in her expression still lingered faintly. The guests, now fully aware of the property boundaries, gathered their belongings and left quietly, exchanging polite goodbyes and apologies. The homeowner watched, appreciating their cooperation and the absence of confrontation. Though the day had been stressful, it was clear that the situation had been resolved respectfully and safely, without harm to anyone involved. As the driveway emptied and the final vehicles drove away, the homeowner took a deep breath and allowed themselves a moment to relax. The cabin, once again, belonged solely to them, and the peace they had come to cherish was returning. It was a serene reminder of why they had chosen this secluded location, to enjoy moments of calm, reflection, and solitude. Sitting back on the deck with a cup of tea, the homeowner reflected on the day's events. It had been a test of patience, composure, and the ability to assert authority without confrontation. Karen's overconfidence and disregard for property boundaries had created a challenging scenario, but the homeowner's calm approach, documentation, and firm communication had ensured a peaceful resolution. The homeowner realized that boundaries were not just about rules or ownership. They were about maintaining respect, order, and trust. By remaining steady, clear, and composed, they had been able to guide the day toward a positive outcome. It was a subtle victory, not in confrontation, but in the reinforcement of respect and responsibility. As the sun began to set, casting long golden rays across the cabin and the surrounding woods, the homeowner allowed themselves a small smile. The lake reflected the colors of the sky, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the soft sounds of nature returned to dominate the environment. For the first time all day, they felt fully at peace. The homeowner also reflected on the role of the community and the HOA. While Karen had believed she had approval, the importance of communication, proper permissions, and understanding boundaries had been clearly highlighted. The HOA had been contacted, and the homeowner made a mental note to discuss future protocols to prevent similar situations. The lesson was clear. Proactive planning and documentation could prevent misunderstandings, and clear lines of authority ensured that property and peace were respected. Even Karen, who had caused the unexpected disruption, had learned a lesson in the value of boundaries and the importance of seeking approval before acting. The homeowner, though firm, had acted with fairness and calm, reinforcing the idea that authority and respect go hand in hand. As twilight descended, the cabin returned to the calm, quiet haven it had always been. The homeowner leaned back in the rocking chair, letting the gentle evening sounds wash over them. The day's events, though challenging, had ultimately reinforced what mattered most: the peace, privacy, and respect for the space they had worked so hard to protect. With the lake reflecting the fading light and the forest enveloping the cabin in quiet serenity, the homeowner knew that the chaos of the day was behind them. Calm had returned, boundaries were respected, and the cabin was once again a sanctuary. The homeowner took a slow sip of tea, feeling gratitude for the stillness around them and confidence in their ability to maintain the peace and privacy of their cherished retreat. The day had been long, the challenges unexpected, but the outcome clear. Respect for property, patience in the face of tension, and calm authority could restore harmony. And as night settled softly over the cabin, the homeowner smiled, ready to enjoy the quiet that was rightfully theirs. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.